I did a lot of research for this conversation, and it's really a pleasure to be talking to you like this. But one of the reasons why I thought it's important to speak with somebody like you is the developments that are happening in the music industry. And before we get into it, I want to first of all welcome you to World Music Views TV show, World Music Views podcast on Spotify, iHeartRadio app, Apple, everywhere. And this is the Urban Caribbean Music Edition. We're talking to Jeremy Harding, who has an extensive catalog of music, worked with a lot of artists, do some big things, work with Sean Paul from 0 to 150 platinum records. And he certainly has something to share with us. So Jeremy, big up yourself. Welcome to World Music Views.
Awesome, Jared. Thanks for having me, and congrats to you as well on the program. Been checking out some of the podcasts and stuff. Great job. Awesome. Well needed.
I've never said this publicly, but World Music Views started because of you, you know.
Oh, come on, bro.
No way. I think I told you this before in a way, but I've always said it. I saw you arguing with a guy on Facebook about the relevance of the Billboard chart as is in terms of calculating consumer value for reggae dancehall.
Oh, I remember that conversation. Yes.
And I had similar thoughts, but I wondered how I could curate it and make it make sense. And after speaking to a guy in Miami named Mark Echo, I don't know if you know him. He runs Echo brand. He owns.
Okay. Oh, Mark Echo. Okay, yes.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So Mark kind of showed me how to make culture and make it bigger than just the neighborhood stuff, you know? And that's how World Music Views came about. But the seed was planted because of you and speaking on Spotify. So I want to go back from the beginning of Jeremy Harding. How did you get into the music industry?
It started off when I was in the industry. Okay. The actual
music.
Industry.
Music.
It started as a kid going to, at the time it was, while I was attending high school, I went to Campion. I was also going to the Jamaica School of Music at the time, before it was called the Edna Manley College of the Performing Arts. It was just a separate schools, the disciplines, music school, drama school, dance school, at the same location, but you could attend as an after-school student and you could attend on the weekends. It wasn't a tertiary college. So I used to go there and do guitar lessons. And I also sang in the choir and I did music theory. So it was sort of after-school program and a Saturday morning program where you could send your kids to learn music whilst you were actually attending high school. So I did that for 5 years and did 5 years of music theory and, studied guitar. Actually with Mikey Fletcher was one of my teachers. Mikey Fletcher plays bass for Shaggy.
I know.
You guys know Fletcher. Yeah, man, calls himself Mega Bass is his name. And also Dr. Ray Hitchens, who teaches up at UA. They were my instructors. Left from there, went away to boarding school in Ottawa for 2 years instead of doing sixth form. And then I went to McGill University in Montreal. And while I was at McGill, I discovered this love for DJing, and myself and a campus mate started a radio show on McGill's college radio station called CKUT 90.3 FM, which in a place like Montreal is effectively the urban station of the city because of their Canadian content laws. So you don't have like regular CBC, Canadian Broadcast Corporation shows that are playing a lot of urban music, especially not, dancehall or reggae. So I did a radio show for 4 or 5 years. And also while I was doing that, I attended a school called Trebas Institute, which is a recording arts school. If some people know Full Sail in Orlando, so it's a similar type of thing. It's like the Canadian equivalent. So I did that. So I was DJing and I had a radio show and I started working in nightclubs and DJing as well. And I went to the recording arts school. And all of that led to actually coming back to Jamaica and opening a small studio in the early 90s, 92, 93. And starting to do jingles. So I did jingles for radio and for TV, jingle production. I had a studio and where I started doing dub plates for local sound systems like Renaissance when they were just starting at the time, and Syndicate Disco, who doesn't exist anymore, but that was my brother Zachary Harding. It was Left Side, it was Arif Cooper from Fame, and it was Sean Anderson Copper Sean from Copper Shot. They were some of the early selectors on Syndicate Sound. And yeah, we had a small studio, and I did jingles, and we did dub plates and for these sound systems. And that's what all led into, you know, meeting Sean Paul and Mr. Vegas and a lot of those young talents, discovering them basically with our little studio and making dub plates for sound systems, and up to, you know, deciding to try and produce my first set of rhythms, which was, you know, Fearless Rhythm, and then followed by Playground Rhythm, which yielded Who Am I by Beenie Man, and it sparked Sean's career with Infiltrate. So this puts it around 1998 now. So that's the build from about 93 to 98. And yeah, just about that time, me and Sean built that relationship, and I became his manager. And yeah, that's kind of how I got into the music industry in a nutshell. Continued ever since.
You skip out the whole part that I want to fill that, right?
Okay.
What made you think, what gave you the audacity to start your own studio? Because as you know, back in the days, this was not a thing for everybody to just have a studio. It's not like now where a man can set up a studio in his room. What gave you that audacity? Where did you get the resources, motivation, all of that to do that?
Well, what happened at the time was that when I was studying abroad in Canada, between Montreal and then I moved to Toronto, I'd actually made some connections with some guys that were starting new platforms with computer recording. And there were guys that were working with Nuendo, which is a Steinberg company product. Some people know Cubase and Nuendo, those pieces of software. Some guys that were working with Nuendo, and they were actually building some custom PCs to be able to effectively run the software and do computer recording. And at the time, the program we now know as Pro Tools was in its infancy. And they had a kind of a bedroom version called Session 8, which was an 8-track digital recorder. So the cost for entry was significantly smaller. This was at the very beginning of the digital audio renaissance of recording. And because I had been away at school and I was kind of exposed to these technologies, and I was kind of around the crowd, and they're like, listen, man, if, you know, we can help you build a custom PC. You're going to go back to Jamaica. You should get this software, check it out and see what it was about. So at that time, that cost to do that per se was a cost of building a computer, whatever, a PC at the time. And the actual system might have cost maybe, I don't know, 4,000 or 5,000 Canadian dollars. So it was a much smaller investment at that time, as opposed to trying to have an actual big time recording studio, which existed, you know, like the mixing labs or you know, Penthouse or any of those places, which was like, you know, with a big, huge mixing board and a big tape machine. And that stuff cost hundreds and thousands of US dollars. There is no way you could just get into that. So my whole thing was about starting a project studio, and I was actually the first of its kind here in Jamaica to pioneer that with a small, fully digital setup. In other words, recording to computers. Other guys were recording to digital tapes, like ADAT machines, they used to call them. Tony Kelly, Dave Kelly, and that was all new technology at the time. But the actual physical record to hard disk recording then, as it was called, I was a pioneer in that in Jamaica at the time. So that was like a big deal. So as you said, the audacity to do it just came out of the fact that I saw opportunity, and that I was sort of aligned with the tech at the time, with the people who were sort of on the tech, and they're like, listen, man, you're going back to Jamaica. Nobody in Jamaica has this. You know, we know Slan Robbie, we know Mixing Lab, we know these guys down there, but they're not using computers to record anything. So, you know what I mean? That's how I got started.
So you have seen music, maybe you haven't seen it from the invention of the gramophone, but in your time, right, from the early 90s, and you would have had a glimpse of it in the 80s, what would you say were significant shifts, other than Pro Tools and so, but in terms of Caribbean music development, what were some of the significant shifts that just acted as a parachute, as something to push off a trampoline for the culture and the music?
Well, as I said it, actually, that was one of the most significant shifts at the time, was the introduction of using computers to record music, because the generation of producers before myself and Tony and Dave Kelly and Shams and these kind of guys were the Slan Robbies and the Gussie Clarks and, you know, the Colin Fattas and those guys who were still using the traditional studios with the tape machines and the large format mixing consoles. So what happened was that when we introduced recording with computers, as we call it, DAW, Digital Audio Workstation, DAW, right? The DAW concept, we became leaders in the space because we were just the young kids up and coming that understood how to use computers to record music. So that created a massive shift towards the creators, because now you took it out of the hands of the big studios and the really, like, you know, qualified, seasoned actual engineers that know how to use mixing boards, and you put it into the hands of, like, you know, kids who were like of a new generation of computer, what's the word I want? Adeptness. You know what I'm saying? To be able to use these kind of tools. I mean, this is the beginning of CDs. This is the beginning of email. You understand? So it was a massive technological shift. And unfortunately, you had a lot of casualties of people who are, you know, brilliant in the field in Jamaican music before the transition to digital audio. And they just couldn't make the transition. Some of them just, they weren't interested. They didn't like how it sounded. Yeah, so the shift into the digital recording space really meant that the practitioners changed, because, as I said, there were casualties from the traditional analog space that couldn't make the jump to digital. Either they just didn't have the tools, they weren't accepting of the format, they didn't understand how to use it, they didn't like how it sounded, they didn't think it would have been the future of music. There's a lot of reasons why that never happened, but it just changed the actual people who were involved in the creation process. It was a big shift and a big swing at the time. So that tremendously impacted the course of the music. So all of a sudden now, instead of you having to have, well, there are two reasons that why it impacted. Primarily, first of all, there's a financial imperative behind the shift. So before that, if you were a record producer, you had to physically own a tape, right? A 24-track reel. You had to pay for studio time at a large studio. You had to pay an engineer. You couldn't do it on your own because you had no idea how to operate the equipment. And you had to pay, you know, musicians, first of all, to, you know, to help record and, you know what I'm saying, and put on your rhythm tracks and stuff like that. So the process of being a record producer cost so much more money, and you had to have so much more, you know, contacts and know-how into the industry. Once you shifted that into a setup where you could do it on a computer, with that ability to record on a computer digitally, record actual audio, also came the ability to create music on a computer. So we started with sequencing, and then we were able to, you know, program and use sounds that are inside the computer. So that eliminated the need to have, you understand, 5-6 musicians, for example, because now you had an opportunity. It's like, oh, well, if I can record in the computer, I can use these drum sounds from the computer. I can program it myself. You know, we're still using drum machines and keyboards and stuff, but you required less musicians, less time. You didn't have to pay for the studio time. You didn't have the cost of the tape. You could kind of learn your sort of ad hoc digital engineering, you know, which substituted for the actual engineer that had to put the tape machine on the physical board and string up everything. So the practitioners changed. So pretty much overnight, after you had, you know, the Jeremy Hardings and the Tony Kellys and the Dave Kellys, those guys were transitioning from the analog tape world as well, but they were young cats, you know what I'm saying, like myself, and were able to make that shift, you know, Shams as well. But some of the older guys couldn't do it. And then you got an even younger set of guys after me that came into, like Don Corleone and Blacks.
Although you went to school in Toronto and America, did you do hip hop? Was hip hop part of what you wanted to do? Was hip hop around? Was there a parallel system going on? I know that from the birth of hip hop and the birth of dancehall, they've always shared producers, ideas, artists, etc. Collaborations happen. What has been your contribution to hip hop, if any, or how have you used hip hop to influence your sound?
I think all of us growing up in high school in the late 80s in Jamaica, we were exposed to hip hop at the time. We were getting, you know, cassettes from, you know, from New York, and people used to travel and bring back cassettes from you know, DJ Red Alert and, you understand, Marley Marl and people like that who were popular in New York at the time. And we were listening to hip hop in our day. We were listening to Rakim and, you know, Big Daddy Kane, and we're listening to, you know, KRS-One and all these type of things. And even from, you know, very early, you could see definitely there were, you know, collabs were taking place at the time. You know what I mean? You had Yellow Man and Run DMC and KRS-One and, you know what I'm saying? And you know, later on Supercat and all of these guys, they were experimenting with with, you know, combining hip hop sounds with dancehall and back and forth. I mean, it was very prevalent. So I think we were all very influenced by it. I mean, Jamaica had a little breakdance culture. Kingston did anyway. You know what I'm saying? And the high schools used to participate in it. You know, I did participate as well. So we did that. We're into breakdancing. You know, the DJ crews started. You know, Delano, them with Renaissance, and Marvin and all of those guys before Renaissance, they were with DJ crews. They're learning to cut and scratch, and they're very influenced by hip hop. It's very much a foundation of Delano's whole, you know, technique as a selector is his ability. You understand, to do what he does, which was heavily influenced by the hip hop genre. So most definitely, and I think when you know start producing records and making beats, especially even after I left Jamaica, obviously, you know, the artists that I would find would be rappers if I was in an urban music scenario. And so, of course, you started making hip hop beats for them as well. So the influence was definitely there in terms of the sound, in terms of the culture, more importantly. The influence was definitely there. And I think it reared its head even as much so in the 90s when we had records with, you know, Heavy D and Buju Banton, and we had records with, you know, even the local practitioners trying to make hip hop style beats, you know, Beenie Man, they were on the beat, some Shocking Vibes that were trying to mimic the Busta Rhymes beats. You had artists who started careers by, you know, mimicking rappers, you know, Elephant Man, Innocent Crew, even Movado in his first early records were, you know, Tupac songs, which he was kind of revamping.
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying? So yeah, man, the influence has always been there. It's not really anything new. I think they were cousins, so to speak, at the time, and they still are. And the influences were shared back and forth, even from, you know, as far back as the 90s.
Why you think hip hop is now pop music? Why you think hip hop, although it had a parallel existence, 2 turntables, a mic, breakdancing, skills and sounds, why you think hip hop is pop, but dancehall is for the most part an underground type of music?
Well, I mean, hip hop became pop because it got embraced by a wider cross section of the audience. You understand? They just have more numbers, and you know, it just got embraced, like, you know, by not just the black and the urban centers, but you know, also the white kids. You get what I'm saying? And the suburban culture as well. It's just a bigger market, and you have more practitioners from different areas. You started off with the gangster rappers, not really with the gangster rappers, but you started off with rappers from, you understand, impoverished areas and from the streets, quote unquote. And you had the gangster rap, which was another, you know, side of it. And then you kind of got to the college rap. You know what I'm saying? With the, you know, the Lupe Fiascos and the Kanyes and these kind of people. You had the Afrocentric rap music, you know, the De La Soul and the Queen Latifah. You had the, you know, the black activist movement rap music, like, you know, Public Enemy and X-Clan. And you had so many streams and so many branches of hip hop. And then it kind of became very pop by the time you got to, like, you know, P. Diddy, you understand, and Mace and Biggie Smalls. And then that kind of blew it up on this kind of pop level. And the records that they were choosing to sample at the time, it used to be like, let's find some obscure soul records, you know, Black American soul records, or even, you know, whatever, quote unquote, white soul records. By the time Diddy came along, Puffy, at the time he called himself, he just started sampling pop records and, you know, started sampling Sting and the Police and, you know, and all these other types of records. So, of course, that opens up the mindset as well. But they have a large audience across the entire United States for it to spread, for it to grow, for it to populate with many different branches and streams.
Do you think what you just said it spoke to hip hop's diversity and ability to just pollinate across sections of society? Does dancehall do that? And you think that's one of dancehall's key to growing and becoming a bigger genre?
Yeah, dancehall is still very much confined to the diaspora. So even when you look back at the marketing strategies that were put behind Sean Paul, for example, or people of that ilk, the same places which they promote the records are the same places where the Jamaican diaspora is active, right? So in other words, plain English, that's where the Jamaicans are. So those are the markets where you find it finds footing first.
New
York. You're talking about New York, your Boston, your Miami. You understand? Those type of places is where the records usually start. And if you look back at the track record of a Sean Paul record or a Serrani record or Egyptian record or, you know what I'm saying, any quote unquote crossover record like that, it all started in those same markets. It starts in the diaspora markets first. It's very difficult for our records. If you want to make a comparison to hip hop, for example, you know, trap music is another genre of hip hop now, which is very well established. And all of that stuff started, you know, in places like Chicago, you know what I mean? And those, you know, kind of places in the United States and down in the Carolinas and those places where there is no Caribbean diaspora to speak of or Jamaican diaspora. So it doesn't take root for us. I don't know, you can ask any dancehall artist today, no, or 20 years ago, how many shows have they actually booked in Chicago or Detroit? You understand me? Or Mississippi or places like that. You're going to get probably, you know, you're lucky if you get one or two.
Yeah.
Because that's just not where the market is. And that's a market where hip hop has managed to proliferate and grow. Now we can't grow in those markets because of the lack of that diaspora support. And it becomes a cultural issue where literally they just don't understand what we're saying. They don't get it. They don't have Jamaican culture around them. They don't know what is jerk chicken. They don't know what is that beef patty. They don't know any of our swear words. They don't know any of our customs. They don't keep dances. Toronto, on the flip, or even in the UK as well, is so much influenced by Jamaican music because the culture is so prevalent. So when I lived in Canada, between Ottawa, Montreal, and Toronto for a total like, 7 years or something like that, West Indian culture in Canada is really strong and really powerful. And as a matter of fact, you could argue that it is the Black culture across Canada is West Indian culture. It's very difficult to find a discrete Canadian Black culture, for example, in Toronto. It's connected to West Indian culture. So therefore, you get a guy like Drake, who is not West Indian at all, but yet he still uses the lingo and the slang and the language. And he says, Wagwan, more tune from a head top. And you get what I'm saying? And he wants to connect with Movado and Popcorn and these people because he understands that Jamaican culture is Black youth culture in Canada. So it propels his whole credibility to be associated with Jamaican culture. You understand? And that's how you get, and so that's very much how those places take root. And in the UK, it's even bigger. The amount of genres you have got jungle music, grime music, all of these things, which are all influenced by Jamaican culture. And you know how they talk as well. And you know what I'm saying? And like all of the Jamaican influence in those cities as well, which helps form the music and shape the music. So it's very much culture driven. So if you don't see that in pockets in the places in the United States where you wish it be more popular, that's just what it boils down to.
So music that is taking root come from artists like Sean Paul, Bob Marley and his children, Shaggy in streaming era. Last year, Sean streamed over 600 million times on Spotify. That's his catalog. Bob Marley leading to. Shaggy streamed 1 billion times on TikTok. His songs did good numbers on Spotify. Do you think streaming has helped the genre? And do you think now that Spotify and Apple is here with a version of their platform, albeit cheaper and free in the case of Spotify, do you think streaming will help the genre and music in general in the Caribbean to be more prevalent on mainstream?
Well, that's a multifaceted question. First of all, we need to understand that all of our music has been available on all these platforms from jump. So whether or not you could access it here in Jamaica on your phone, you understand? It all existed. A few years ago when I was teaching up at University of West Indies, we had this class where we were speaking about Spotify, and the kids there didn't know what I was talking about. And I brought a laptop and I had a VPN, a virtual private network, as you know. But for the listeners, they understand to be able to connect to the website. And when they saw it, their first reaction was like, oh, but we can't get this in Jamaica. There's no Jamaican music on it. I said, no. Every distributor that somebody here in Jamaica, a dancehall producer, reggae producer that we use, whether it's VPAL, Zojak, every single one of these platforms puts the music on Spotify, on Apple Music, on Deezer, on Amazon, all of them. It's available all over the place. So it's never not been available. So the audience outside of Jamaica who wants to consume dancehall or reggae always had an opportunity to consume dancehall or reggae. That hasn't changed.
What I look at it as is this, right? So back in the days, even foreigners, if them do want bust a tune, them come to Jamaica, come to the core audience in a dance, and you play a song of Stone Love or wherever, passa passa, and boom, 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 and forward, and you get your forward, and you can measure the impact of your music with a tested demographic, right? Because the Jamaican audience is hard, and you know them love the fact that if these people say you're good to go. Record labels, I've seen this happen with people like Cali Buds when Columbia was trying to break him. They had a launch at Asylum at the time to get the impression of how people would receive him. Now I'm saying with Spotify and other streaming platforms being available, do you think that cultural capital still exists to break artists, one, and as a result of breaking them and then the music is now everywhere, will that help?
You got 1.2 million people in Kingston. You got 3 million overall, 750,000 between the ages of 15 and 29, right? So if you take that amount of population and say that they're going to stream and then argue that they're going to actually pay for a subscription as well, they're not making enough of a dent into overall Spotify bottom line for somebody outside of Jamaica to observe Spotify streams and be like, oh my God, this must be the hottest song, because now the streams on Spotify have leaped by this increased user patronage from people in Jamaica or the Caribbean. The numbers just can't support it, number one. Number two, we already have YouTube as our barometer of what our quote unquote local, what you would say, what's happening and what's, popping in Jamaica.
How they're consuming the music.
Yes. You understand? YouTube is already the barometer that we're all using. And even with YouTube still, you're going to account for maybe, I don't know the exact figures. It's got to be maybe 60% of it is local in some cases, maybe less, 50, 40. It's still a worldwide audience which taps into
World Music Views does collect this information every week. And I do Jamaica. So I can pull up now and tell you which artist is streaming the most in Jamaica on each platform based on Montego Bay, Kingston, like all the parishes.
Okay, so give us the idea then. If somebody has 1 million streams totally, how much of that is attributed to a Jamaican audience? Could you give us a rough?
100%, because it's a Jamaican chart. So I can tell you how many persons are streaming in Jamaica.
All right, so give me an idea of a big record of a Jamaican dancehall record and from a Jamaican audience.
Biggest record, I've been doing the chart for 2018 till now. The biggest record ever streamed in a week was Lighter with 1 million in 1 week. From Jamaica, nowhere else.
From Jamaica,
Jamaica. Every week, the number one record would have like maybe 300,000 to 500,000 hits. But when Lighter dropped, it did 1 million that week when it went to number one.
Okay. That's fantastic. That's great. The argument is then you're going to get those million people to migrate to a Spotify platform. And even if you got every single one of them to migrate to Spotify, to put their 1 million views on Spotify, you're still not making enough of a dent in a Spotify, in a view count that anybody's going to take notice of it, is what I'm trying to say, outside of Jamaica, to be like, well, that's an indicator that that's a hot song in Jamaica. They're not, the culture of how they consume music on Spotify is not to go on there and look to say, oh, well, this is hot, therefore let me listen to this. It's not how they use the Spotify culture of consuming music. You follow what I'm saying? It's a very different way. They do it by playlisting, first of all, which Jamaica has got a lot of groundwork to catch up on how to do this.
Here's the big part that I'm going to throw at you. And my second follow-up question will be, how did you break Sean Paul? But think about this. I want to parallel Sean's success and what's happening now for other people. So Jamaica and the other Caribbean islands put together have 26 million internet users, right? Probably half of that are active music listeners, and probably a quarter will stream stuff like YouTube stuff. Because when you go Skilly Bang, all the guys that go number one in Cayman, Trinidad, etc., cumulatively, they probably stream between 1 and 3 million for the week, right? Mm-hmm. But there's Africa, which is not readily accounted for as a core audience for the genres that are made in Jamaica and the Caribbean. To what do you attribute Africa as a core audience for bossa artists, bossa song?
Africa has their own artists, though. Africa has their own streaming services. Africa has Boomplay and things like that with nearly 80 million subscribers in one place alone. Africa has a lot of streaming services where they stream their music from their artists, and places like Nigeria where they have, you know, things in 50 different languages. You understand that they have to. Africa, their streaming services are tied into their mobile networks. So they're offered on the mobile platforms. They're a part of the mobile platforms. That is how they can overcome that paywall. And the subscribers are paying like, you know, $1.50 US, the equivalent. You understand? For a month, as opposed to in Jamaica, Spotify is charging $5.99 and Apple is charging $5.99. Africa is not a territory that is waiting to consume Jamaican music and, oh my God, Spotify is here. Their user base is already using their streaming platforms. They have not been sitting around waiting for Spotify or Apple Music to be available in any of their regions. You do the research on it. So I don't think that opens up all of a sudden this floodgate to say like, oh wow, well all of a sudden because Spotify is available, you know what I mean, you know, across these African countries, people are going to jump on it now and they're going to now go and start to stream Jamaican music. Mm-hmm. That it doesn't compute. That math does not compute at all. They have their audience. They make their music. You understand me? They're paying what they're paying through their mobile carrier and their service already. I don't think so. I don't think that makes that jump, that difference. You have to remember this, you know, there was a time back in the 90s, you know, when Japan was one of these major markets for reggae artists.
I remember.
Right? We'd go there and we'd tour all the time and you had all the Japanese selectors come here and people are trying to do this whole thing with Japan back and forth. Japan was its own market for licensing. Like I could license a record and give it to the US and give it to the UK differently. This is before, obviously, the internet. And you could license to Japan. All of that disappeared. Japan eventually just got their own reggae bands, their own reggae artists, and hold their own concerts. You get what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And just learned and took what they did and created their own culture around it. And the African music, whether it's, you know, Afrobeats or whatever you want to call it, they have done the exact same, bro. So I don't look to Africa as like Spotify will now be available there. We're going to see this massive uptick in people now supporting Jamaican music. They already have their platforms. They weren't sitting around waiting for Spotify to come. Like how we have been kind of sitting around, quote unquote, sitting around waiting for, you get what I'm saying? A major streaming platform to hit us. You know what I'm saying? So I don't really believe.
So now that it hit us, now that the streaming platform hit us, right?
Yeah.
In your words, it hit us. Do you think artists have a responsibility to make the streaming platform cool, or the streaming platform has to make itself cool and relevant to the culture in terms of playlists, tastemakers, all of that, who will curate what's hot on the platform?
No, the first one is what you said. I think the great opportunity from it, so let me not sound so super negative like Spotify makes no sense and it can't work. Let me be positive. The positive uptake that I take from this, right? From it being here is that we as creators will now understand how the platform works, which means that we'll be able now to understand how playlisting works. We'll be able now to be able to lobby to get songs on playlists and how to curate playlists. We'll be able to make that into our priority. We'll be able to understand and take a look at how the system works, who is streaming, in what areas, how the platform is being used. We as the creators, whether it be the record producers, the labels, the guys that build the rhythms, them, the artists ourselves, the writers, all of us will now be able to have a view onto the platform and into the marketplace. Can I imagine, like, you know, if you are growing crops, for example, in the country and you've never seen inside of a supermarket, you have no idea how your products are being sold. You just know you grow them and you send them to town or whatever, and you get back a check, right? Because they're being sold somewhere, but you've never actually seen them. Now, for the first chance, you get to walk into those supermarkets and see where your products are being placed on the shelf, where the other products are, how the whole supermarket runs, what the system is. This is the advantage that we're getting out of now having access to Spotify and Apple Music here for us. That's the most major advantage. You get what I'm saying? Learning how that industry works. So that is what I see. Spotify's bottom line is just to get subscribers. They couldn't care less about the culture of anything. They're just they're going for world domination. You understand? That's what their issue is. Oh, we'll just sign up 80 something more countries. Awesome. So we're going to get, how much percentage of that paid subscribers that we're going to get? Yeah. You know, can we get 50,000 kids in Jamaica? I think that number is ridiculous anyway. To pay $5.99, I don't think you're getting anywhere near that. But whatever you get is just gravy for them per month. You understand? They don't have a mandate to expose the culture or do anything like that necessarily with it. That's not on Spotify at all. That's on us to go into the platform, see how it works. You understand? Get onto playlists, try and utilize the playlist now. Let's contact the guy that does Dancehall Official. You see this other playlist that comes about. Let local producers, artists themselves start to make their own user playlists like that. You understand? Promote their brands, push their content the way they want to push it. Take advantage of things like Smart Hub and those type of internet services now where it's pretty much like a pay-for-play system to get onto playlists. Mm-hmm. You understand what I'm saying? For example, now they need to explore that and look into that. That's the uptick of us being able to receive Spotify here in Jamaica. To be honest with you, anybody who is a music producer or record label, with all the technology that they have sitting down in front of them with their computers and their software and everything else they're using to create music, these should have been the most tech-savvy people anyway in the music industry. You understand? They should don't have a VPN on their phone long time looking on Spotify and seeing it works. You get what I'm saying? Jamaicans figure out how to get, Zelle and Venmo and Cash App on their phones, right? And that's not available in Jamaica either, but they figured that out quick. So they can go on IG Live and say, yeah, yo, dog, they don't know anything about my Cash App, dog, really. They figured that out real fast. So I'm just saying to you, they should be the people in the space who are also saying, listen, yeah, Spotify, I've already had a Spotify account. Yeah. Because I'm saying I've been using a VPN. Now that it's great that it's here in Jamaica to you understand, to be able to look at the technology and examine it and see where it's going to go. The streaming numbers have been growing, as you know.
Yeah.
The streaming numbers have been growing worldwide, as you know. It keeps growing. CDs are going down. Downloads are going down. Interestingly enough, you know that vinyl is actually outselling CDs for the first time in like forever. Like recently, the last report. You know what I'm saying? So the streaming model is here to stay. It is growing bigger. More paid subscribers are coming on board all over the planet. The immediate impact of it for us here in Jamaica, I think how you take advantage of it is, one, understand the platform. So as the creators, we know how to utilize it now to our advantage, right? And two, remember this, Jamaican music has always been an export product. You understand? Or tourism is an export product. Or coffee is an export product, right? Or marijuana is an export product. And the music has always been an export product. So when we were making music, we were selling records outside of Jamaica. It wasn't record sales downtown Kingston that was supporting any artist or any producer or any industry, right? When downloads came into play with iTunes, it's the same thing. People are downloading it outside of Jamaica. When we do stage shows, where's the money? Outside of Jamaica, not the local stage shows. For the streaming, it's no different. It's a streaming that you want to get outside of Jamaica to stream the music we're making here. It is not a model of like, oh, now that we can stream locally, let us abandon the market demand for outside Jamaica. Let us become more inclusive, make music for Jamaicans and expect Jamaicans to want to stream it. Because the interesting thing about what's going to happen now is that nobody's going to be able to point the finger anymore and say, oh, you know what? It's your guys' fault because there's no industry structure and there's no business setup and there's no Def Jam Jamaica, whatever major label to push the music and to market and promote it. That will no longer be the excuse. The excuse is simply going to be, my fans are not paying for a premium account. You're going to put it back on the people. And you're going to say to them, I'm making music. Why aren't you guys here in Jamaica that love me so much, that come to my YouTube channel, leave all your comments, you understand? Drive up all my views, go on my Instagram, come on my IG lives, fill up my page with comments. Why aren't you guys paying the $5.99 per month for Spotify or Apple Music to support us? You understand? The music community, so that you guys can now go stream on the platforms where we're going to actually make some money from it. They're going to put it back onto the audience now. And that's going to be an interesting part now for everybody to sit back and say, listen, when the audience responds and how they respond, you get what I'm saying, and what reaction you get from them as to whether or not they choose to embrace these platforms. Will it always stay like this, JR? I certainly hope not. And people are going to say, Jeremy, look, people use Netflix in Jamaica now, etc. Yeah, it takes a long time for those things to be adopted in Jamaica. After we run through all of the Kodi boxes and the Android this and the download that, and then we'll finally bite the bullet and some of us get Netflix and we're still sharing the Netflix account with people. You get what I'm saying? Yeah, you're going to get some people are going to say, you know what, screw this. I can't be bothered with this YouTube thing. I just want to get Spotify. You know what I mean? You're going to slap some kids who are on Audio Mac. It's going to be a very slow transition. It's going to take a long time. But eventually, I think the point I'm trying to make is that it's not going to be enough to sustain our business. You understand what I'm saying? It's going to be nice, like, yeah, 5 years from now, maybe, yeah, man, you know, we have decent Spotify penetration. We might have 50,000 people, even 100,000 people, whatever you think you're going to have. There's still a population, it's still a little place right there, a little amount of kids or people are going to stream music.
One of the things that you're missing in explaining what was good about it is how much we can now see the local consuming numbers. So World Music Views, as you know, is about chart curation. Like we have the accurate numbers for how music is consumed every day, every week, right? We didn't have that. With data, no. The data that I have now, I could start a record label in Jamaica if I wanted to, because it's so detailed and meticulous. Like I could tell you who I run the place in Portland, you know, on lane, based on the cell tower that picks up the stream that's going on there, right?
That's awesome, yeah.
So if we now have Spotify where Spotify will give me a chart, I don't even have to do that chart no more. Spotify is going to give me a chart each week to say who I run the place on Spotify, right? Now,
right.
That to me is as powerful as, well, maybe not as powerful, but it's very important as a man who runs Sting. The man who locked Sting always be the artist for the next year when I was growing up, because that was the only way to validate audience consumption, audience reaction. You know, it's who were the man of the year was the thing in a dancehall. So I think Spotify, Apple, YouTube too. Can't afford YouTube. YouTube is like the master of this whole video streaming thing. It helps to validate the music, at least locally, where there wasn't any structure before to understand the data. Like, where are people creating music and where are they consuming music?
And do you have your YouTube numbers to see?
Yeah, man.
Okay. So you had a barometer of local YouTube streaming, which was free.
Yeah.
So I think your Spotify numbers are going to show you who's paying for it. No,
they'll show you the free one too.
Right. So your Spotify numbers will be another barometer to just show another platform.
Yeah.
But you've already have YouTube to show you that who was hot, who was running the place. You get what I'm saying? I don't think you never had anything, and then now you got in Spotify, so now you finally have something. I'm saying to you of all people have already showed me, like, you can tell me exactly how many YouTube streams are from a local audience. You know what I'm saying?
Spotify's the audio, what YouTube is the video. So if a man don't drop a hot video, he probably won't get a lot of streams on YouTube. But if
YouTube is still the biggest audio streaming service in the planet, period. It still is, regardless, even if you think of it as that, like it's a video platform and not necessarily audio platform. It still is the number one consumption of music plan for all streaming everywhere. It's the largest music discovery platform too as well, out of all the digital platforms. This is where YouTube, where everybody goes to, you understand, to find new music as well. So listen, they're both barometers. No, you're not wrong. I'm not contesting what you're saying. I'm agreeing with you. I'm just saying that we've already had that barometer. I'm not really so sure, if not just for the sake of reporting, just, you know, I'm saying like, hey, this is JR and the hottest song is this week in Jamaica. I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like, how does it affect industry-wide? Like, what does it do for our bottom line?
So this is what I'm asking. Protege got signed to a record label with his production company, and he was able to send a couple of artists through, right? But Protege don't have a hit song. The traditional selection process that record labels use, which is you have to sell from a signer, that wasn't the case. Right. Cultural capital that I would assume, and the owner for RCA, well, the CEO for RCA said that it's an enthusiastic signing. That's what he said for signing Protege. Now, I'm saying, are we able, and I'm asking you, I'm not telling you, are we able to see more marketing, promotional help through the cultural capital and the validation that record labels will enthusiastically see. Because them couldn't see numbers before. Them couldn't see it. They couldn't know who was really popping. The core audience wasn't part of the conversation. The people were full up a concert, a stadium for, let's not say budget, got enough people flying for that. People were full up a Protege concert, right? At Hope Zoo. Many of those people weren't on the platforms consuming music, so they couldn't know how would they respond to it. I'm saying, Protege, other new artists coming in, do you think that with the advent of these platforms, the cultural capital will be as important for signings and artists going out there and getting
I don't necessarily think so, because I don't think they're looking to what's happening in Jamaica as necessarily their decision maker as to whether or not they believe that this artist works for them. I think they're signing and looking for artists, and they always have, that have been able to get themselves out of the core and be able to translate to a larger market where larger numbers exist. So the Shaggies, the Shawns, all of these people, they weren't tearing up Jamaica for labels to take notice of them. But what happened is that they had records and they had impact outside of Jamaica for people to say like, hey, this can actually work outside of Jamaica. I think that remains true to this day. We still talk about this crossover record. You understand? We still talk about this ability to reach markets outside of Jamaica. And I think that that's the key as to what they've always been looking for. At the end of the day, it's still, as much as we want to talk about the culture, they still have to be able to make money from it. You understand? So there's little point in signing an actor trying to promote or push something because you think it's so culturally relevant to Jamaican culture. But if I can't earn from it, if it can't impact outside of Jamaica, then as a business, it doesn't really make any sense to anybody, even for the foreign label to come on, quote unquote, invest without even trying to comment much on Protege's deal, which I can't because I don't know anything about it. It's his impact across the world. You understand? Which makes him appealing. It's not because, well, you're rocking Jamaica. You get what I'm saying? It's definitely impact. Now, does it matter to be big in Jamaica? Yes, it does. Of course it does. Does it matter for your street credibility or your local credibility in the core market of Jamaica? Of course, it definitely gives people a jump start. It gets you noticed. It gets people talking about you. You know what I'm saying? 100%. But I think they look at it very much from like, well, you know, who can do that versus who can graduate outside of the core market of Jamaica? You understand? And to be able to affect markets outside of Jamaica. I think that's really, you know, what they're, you know, just a lot more interested in. You know what I'm saying? That's the impact.
What is that? What is that thing? Like, what makes an artist translatable outside of Jamaica?
There's a lot of things. The first thing people will tell you, though, is that the music needs to be something that they can relate to. So topically, it needs to be something that they can relate to outside of Jamaica, and also just the actual delivery of the song. So you can have, just in the same sort of way, if you think about it, you have hip hop records which are really popular in Jamaica, for example, right? And you have records which are big in the hip hop world and does no work in Jamaica, right? We have a particular brand or style or artist that we like, that we can understand, like literally when we hear them, which the topics resonate with us. And you have some other artists who are massive artists in the hip hop space. Nobody in Jamaica cares about them. You know what I'm saying? Chief Keef, you know, some big Chicago drill rapper or something like, you know what I'm saying? Like in Jamaica, like, who the hell is that? It doesn't work. The patois, the language, the music, everything, it just doesn't work for us. Flip that back for our music abroad. You get what I'm saying? And then you get into this discussion of like certain types of records with certain types of lingo or topic matter, or even, you know, beats, you know, danceability, all of these type of things which resonate or don't resonate. These are factors which make records work and not work outside of your core. At the heart of it, it's difficult enough just for you as a Jamaican to speak to people outside of Jamaica when you travel, for them to understand you. You understand? Especially if you have a very, very thick patois accent, you know, whereas perhaps me and you don't right now having this podcast, but you get what I'm saying? Somebody else might have, much less to do music, and you're doing it in deep Jamaican patois and they can't get exactly what you're saying. They can't understand and they can't get the topic. So these are the things that you're going to be thinking about in terms of records that kind of work. You know what I mean? People just say it in, you know, plain English records then, or topics everybody can kind of get with. You know what I'm saying? It's a market. that you have to decide whether or not you want to cater to that market. I think it's very myopic for you to believe that I'm just going to make what I want to make. I'm going to make a song about me and how I'm feeling and what's going on in my local area, in my local district or town or city in Jamaica or whatever. But I want it to cross over across the entire world. I want a white kid from Kansas in the middle of America to go on Spotify and stream that record of me talking about, you understand me, JR? That's where I think we'll get a little bit unrealistic. It's like, that record is not going to take root as that quote unquote crossover product. Yeah. So it depends on your perspective.
Yeah, I love that. I love how you went into that simplification of it. You can't make music for your lane and expect Kansas I go immediately gravitate to it.
But it happens to hip hop the same way. That same drill rapper in Chicago, you get what I'm saying? He might make a song relevant to his community. Yeah. That'll never cross over, you get what I'm saying, to a radio station in Miami, for example, much less get to Jamaica.
Important. Those songs are still important to speak.
No, but the difference is that drill rapper, he can sit down there on his own and he can get 10 million YouTube views just from his little community.
And make millions of dollars.
Oh, bro, so he's good. Like, I don't need to make records. Forget leaving America. I don't even need to make records to go a few states south of me.
Yeah.
You understand me? They have that market, but we don't have the market. The numbers just don't exist for us in that way. Now, to clarify, let's say pre-COVID or post-COVID, yes, you could still do your shows. You get what I'm saying? And still do your dub plates and still make your living. So I'm not advocating that every dancehall artist needs to try and make, gal, wind up your bumper records like some simple, easy, catchy, dancey, you know what I'm saying? Thing that everybody will just like on the crossover tip. Definitely not. But you have to understand that that's what you're doing. You're now catering to that market who is going to bring you for the stage show to do your hardcore brand of dancehall or to pay for those dub plates. That's where your living is. For us to equate that to Spotify is in Jamaica, therefore, you understand? Mm-hmm. This artist with this hardcore lyric is now all of a sudden going to have the world at their feet. You know what I'm saying? Or get the entire Jamaica now. All 750,000 of those kids between 15 to 29 to suddenly pay $5.99 US for a subscriber account to stream 10 songs per day for the end of the month to see 300 million streams. And by the time you do the math and break it down, you're making a couple extra $1,000 each per artist in your pocket, if that much. It's not realistic to use that as like a gains mechanism, is what I'm saying to you. For the points which you brought forward about the analytics, right? That's a great point. And you're the man for that, definitely, to be able to say, well, now that we have Spotify, I can use that alongside my YouTube and show you that this song by this guy definitely is the hottest song in the core in Jamaica. Because that's streaming the most in the Jamaican marketplace, in the Kingston marketplace, as you said, down to freaking the Portmore marketplace. You could, you know what I'm saying, figure it out. Right. So that for the analytics side of it, that's great information to have. And particularly nowadays, where dancehall is not Kingston anymore. It hasn't been for the past 2 years. Dancehall is Montego Bay now. You get what I'm saying? Plus Kingston, plus St. Catherine, plus there's all of these pockets now where artists are coming from and being popular in their own right.
St. Thomas.
You get what I'm saying? St. Thomas in their own communities. Exactly. Those guys out there as well. You know what I mean? So that's fantastic analytics. And for that reason, I think it will be significant. You know what I mean? If they utilize that information, if that information can be made readily available, well, I guess someone like yourself, can pump that information out there and people can see it. So for that reason, it's fantastic. But in terms of the bottom line of like, wow, we're going to be able to make a living off of this now because us as Jamaicans will support us as Jamaicans. I think that's where we you understand me? The paywall is just too steep and the culture of consumption is just way too different now. You're really asking a lot for people to abandon the free platforms.
Globally, like Spotify capitalizes on the relationship between themselves and the record labels, but they make a lot of money from podcasting because they can sell ads. In fact, They gave Joe Rogan $100 million. They've never given Drake that money, and Drake sell like a gazillion.
Exactly.
So podcasting, I'm excited to see what will happen in the podcast world and if they'll in fact come in, especially in Africa, especially in Latin America, where those numbers are tremendous, and even here in Jamaica, where we have influential people who have things to say that encapsulate large audiences. I'm looking forward to seeing that happening. But to switch conversations, I ask everybody this. I ask Walter Fire. The publishing and masters is where a lot of money is made in music, right? Last year, $43 billion was made. 12% of that went to artists, partly because artists don't own them masters and publishing in many cases. Jamaican, no different. One, do you own your masters? Two, do you encourage more artists to own their masters, or they should just make the music, give it away, get the money right now, and feed them family, as is the case, or as was the case with many artists?
I listened to your podcast with Walter Farr, right? Big up to Walter. I know Walter quite well. Me and him interacted very well throughout the years. You understand? And congrats to him on all of his success. And he's a very smart brother, and he has a lot of great insight into the industry. His answer was, yes, artists should own their masters. My answer is that if you can't exploit your masters properly, you owning the masters is nothing more than you just saying you own your masters. You're owning something and you don't know how to exploit it. In other words, you don't know how to utilize it for it to make money. So the fact of the matter is that, does Jeremy Harding own masters? I have licensed out my masters to various record labels throughout the years, which has earned me money with a catalog. Instead of me sitting down and trying to tell you that I'm going to administrate my own masters. You get what I'm saying? So we're coming from a point of view as like, well, yeah, you're going to tell me that you own your master, then that means that you're not going to assign it to a distributor for them to get a license to distribute the master and have certain rights to it. You understand? That means that you're not going to, do publishing deals with administrators or co-pub deals with people that can also exploit your masters. You get what I'm saying? On both sides, on the actual master side and on the songwriting side, the publishing side.
You can't own it and do all of that? You can't own the masters and...
Well, you don't have the infrastructure to do all of that. You don't have the reach. You just as one person, you just don't have it. You don't have the connections. You don't have a full staff. You don't have people out there pitching your music. You don't have people out there tracking down your royalties. You don't have people out there trying to figure out, like, you understand how many streams were in freaking Hawaii last month, so you can make sure you can go and collect it. You're just not really in that position. You're going to end up giving it to assigning the master to some service for them to be able to collect it for you. You follow what I'm saying? Number one. Number two, the value in the master is if the song is a hit. If the song's not a hit, then your value is nothing. You only earn publishing money from songs which are hits. They have to play on the radio. They have to stream. They have to get licensed, which means they have to be hit records. So everybody can sit around in their homes with their laptops and say, yeah, well, I own all my masters, all 100 of them. They don't have any value. You get what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So the better argument is to say, to understand how your publishing administration works and make sure that you have a publishing administrator at the very least, if not a co-publishing deal, would recognize publishers or administrators so they can properly monetize the catalog and go out there and see where it's making money and try and put it in places to get money and collect the monies on your behalf. You follow what I'm saying? And there's a lot of that money to which they just even can't collect as your own. You have to have a publisher for them to be able to go and collect it. So the real value is in learning how that works. There's a shocking amount of dancehall artists, shocking number, that have no publisher administration deals in place. Nobody's collecting the publishing on their behalf. Big artists, too, you'd be surprised to know. You get what I'm saying? And you'd be like, why? And it's simply because they just don't understand how it works. And there's this mantra in their head that, well, you know, I own my publishing. And so nobody's not asking you to give up ownership of your publishing. Like, let's be clear. You're talking about your copyright in the writing of your music is one thing different from owning a master recording. You have two different things. But you need people to exploit the copyright for you to make money, which is why you have all of these services, which is why you have PROs, right? The ASCAPs and the BMIs of the world, which is why you have the publishing companies who are out there, and which is why you have the labels. And even if you sign up for a service like a DistroKid or a CD Baby or TuneCore to put it out yourself, they're still going to recommend to you a publishing administrator. They're going to be like, oh, you know, you guys need a public. Why don't you sign up with Songtrust, for example? You get what I'm saying? BeatStars, the platform where you sell and you lease beats, now have a publishing deal as well, I think, with Sony Music Publishing. So they're now offering publishing services as well to people who are putting up beats for sale or for lease. You follow what I'm saying? Because it's another place to go and collect money from, where they're going to realize that, people are, nobody understands how this works. You have Sound Exchange, which is yet another entity which collects royalties on the digital side, right? For your Sirius XM and your Pandora and your, what they call the non-interactive streaming. In other words, the radio station style streaming, then, not Spotify where you click on select play and etc. But you understand, as I said, like the Pandoras and the Sirius XMs and those kind of places, satellite, internet radio and those things, right? And Sound Exchange where they collect. You understand, where you have monies over here to collect for the master rights owners and for the performers. You follow what I'm saying? These are the things which people need to be more concerned about, rather than just trying to proudly puff up your chest and say, well, I own my master. What are you doing with it?
So at the top level of the music business is where the music turns into paper, right? So Vivendi, who owns Universal, as a publicly traded company, and investors buy the music as paper, like it's a catalog, right? Hypnosis, who I'm going to be interviewing them in a couple of weeks, because they're buying a lot of publishing. They bought Shakira's publishing recently.
All right.
They're buying up all these publishing for hundreds of millions of dollars, and they're a publicly traded company in the UK.
Right.
Do you think we in Jamaica need to organize ourselves as such and start to own publishing companies at that level, where we're making the music as manufacturers, which started from, as you explained earlier, the big board and then the computer, and then now we can make music anyway, right? But we haven't found, as you just explained, the kind of market efficiency and the kind of brain power to organize ourselves at the top level of music, where we own the instrument, where the music turns into securities paper. You get me? So Rihanna's catalog, everybody's catalog, Sony, ATV, own everybody catalog, including Skillibeng, which they just made a deal with recently. But beyond, the person that owns Sony, which is the people Kanye in discussions with now to buy back his masters, those people own the music where it turned into security paper. Do you think we need to have companies like that listed on the stock exchange, especially for new artists who don't make music yet, and turn the music into proper investment options, just like Lasco sell mackerel, Lasco manufacturing, all these companies listed on the stock exchange, they have a product to sell. Do you think we can commoditize the music at that level in Jamaica?
Well, first of all, I'll say two things I'll say to you. First of all, number one, we do have our own publishing companies. We've had them for years. And there's this myth that people say that we don't have these companies, don't exist in Jamaica. Of course you do. Gussie Clark has Dubplate Music Publishing. VP has STB Publishing. There's Greensleeves Publishing. There's Jack Russell Publishing in the UK. There's Tafari Music. There's Royalty Network. You get what I'm saying? There are tons of reggae music publishers owned by Jamaicans, and some of them in Jamaica and some of them outside of Jamaica. There's all kinds of reggae music publishers that have been existing for the last 20 years, 30 years easily, who publish the catalogs. You understand? Some of them do administration. In other words, they just kind of collect and pass on the monies for a smaller fee. Some of them do actual co-publishing deals, right? Where they're doing a co-ownership on the publishing side of the records. You know what I'm saying? And they exploit the records, they collect the monies for them, they facilitate, they try and shop them to get them into, synchronization deals from movies, TV, etc. We have all of those things. They have all existed. The catalogs aren't of the value that you can publicly list these on any kind of stock exchange to generate any capital. The catalogs just don't have the value. That's what it boils down to. Shakira's catalog has value. Timbaland, the Eagles, right? All of these people who are selling their publishing, they have massive value. All of these catalogs. So of course they're worth that money. Of course they can attract investors, because somebody's going to say, yes, 10 years from now, we're going to take up this same Shakira record and we're going to put it back in a TV commercial for 30 seconds, and it's going to earn us immediately, attract a license fee of $1 million, for example, right? or some artist is going to come on cover her catalog or sing back one of her songs, or it's going to be in some sort of new virtual, you know what I'm saying, video game experience, like your Fortnite, and you're doing a Travis Scott concert. They're paying $25 million. You get what I'm saying? To be able to do that. So it will have value. You have another thing now called NFTs, right? Non-fungible tokens in the art world, which is cryptocurrency based, right? Bitcoin and Ethereum attaches that value to it. So this is crypto art now, where people selling digital art in marketplaces. I know it's now, the music is like at the very, very cusp of entering that market as well, where people are making exclusive content to sell digitally on the blockchain with NFTs, right? You guys can go Google it and look it up. It's a fascinating space. So all of those things people are looking at and saying like, yeah, these things are going to have value in the future. For us to sit here now with Jamaican music, first of all, as I said, one, we do have the catalogs. They're massive. You know what I'm saying? They do exist out there for the publishing. So it's not like nobody has to invent any new publishing company to hold the catalog, especially for the quote unquote young artists or whatsoever. It exists. Number one. Number two, again, it boils back down to value. Just because you make it doesn't mean it has value. Music has to have value. It has to be a hit record to have value. You understand what I'm saying, JR? It has to be a hit. It has to stream. It has to play. It has to sell. It has to, you get what I'm saying? Be performed. It has to be broadcast. It has to go on the radio. It's got to be a hit for it to have any value or any worth. You can't just make it and sit with it and say, it has worth because I made it. You get what I'm saying? So these things have existed. And a lot of the younger practitioners I've noticed in this space have now gotten up and tried to say things like, oh, well, you know, nothing, the business structure isn't there because these things don't exist. You're correct about the business structure, but the fact is that the companies do exist. The distributors exist. The publishing companies do exist. You understand? The methods of collection do exist. You do have jams. You do have JCAP. And you don't have to sign up with those people. You could still go to your ASCAPs and your BMIs and these places and sign up, and your PRS and these things in London. All of these things and these societies very much exist. You get what I'm saying? And they're out there, and some people do take advantage of them, some do not. And mostly, JR, it's just because they just don't know. They just don't understand how it works. They have never taken the time to research it or to look into it. They're just not interested. They just have a very blinkered approach to the music industry, which is, I want to make my song. I want to put it on YouTube. I want to get how much people, millions to love it. You get what I'm saying? Then I want to get my visa and fly on a plane and go on to my show and collect my cash. Yeah. And that's pretty much, aside from the YouTube part, that's how Jamaican music industry has been from, I have known it from the 90s. Make a record, guitar disc jockey, make it popular. Guitar disc jockey outside of Jamaica, make it popular outside of Jamaica, on the radio, in the dances. Then eventually a promoter calls me and says, my youth, show, where I must send the money? Or when you come, you pick it up, send you 2 tickets, and they go on their work. And that's been our music industry. As I said, since I've known it from the 90s. The only component which has changed is now, instead of giving it to the radio disc jockey, now you have the ability to say, well, screw radio, which I don't necessarily agree with, but that's the thought process. You get what I'm saying? No more gatekeepers.
Why you
put
don't
it right to YouTube.
Screw radio. Tell me why you don't think it's screw radio.
You can't say screw radio because you're not going to be Taylor Swift without radio. You're not going to be Bruno Mars without radio. You're not going to be a massive superstar without radio. The influence of radio is still, you understand, massive, massive influence that you can't escape. It's still, it's an incredible influence on the music industry across the planet, which you still can't escape. You understand? Internet notwithstanding. So it's not to say you can't make money from the internet. Sure, you could be a Latin music artist, a reggaeton artist, or somebody like that, and you could have a hot song that is killing the reggaeton space, and you have 200 million views. And you're going to say, yeah, well, I have the same amount of views as Taylor Swift, and I just made even more money off of YouTube. Sure, but you're never going to be that household name and that mega star like Rihanna, like Chris Brown, like Taylor Swift without, understand? Radio. Still the influence of terrestrial radio. Yeah, without a doubt, you're still not going to be able to do it. So it just gives you another option, however, as an artist, is what I'm saying to you. You get what I'm saying? Many artists don't really care about those things. You'd be surprised, or maybe not so surprised to know. Many artists are just like, listen, I just want to make my music in my space. As a matter of fact, I just want to be able to have my website with my music and my Instagram, and I use Bandcamp. And I sell my own records on Bandcamp, and I'm good. and I make a few $1,000 a month, and I'm happy with that. I don't want to be a part of the machine of the music industry necessarily to make a living out of music. Many musicians just tour on their shows. You get what I'm saying? They just love performing. They just love touring and doing shows, whether you're in a band or whether you're a DJ or you're a rapper or you're some sort of performance art person. If you're an EDM DJ or that kind of guy, you couldn't care less about a record label. You put out your music, you put it on Beatport. You go and do your show. You go and DJ, quote unquote, DJ perform in front of, you get what I'm saying? Tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people, and they make crazy money. They're not relying on the traditional music industry of like a song on the radio and an artist and going to the Grammys and et cetera, to make a living. You have different facets of the music industry of how people make a living and what people want to get out of the music industry.
Who are you listening to now?
To be honest with you, I've spent less time listening to music and more time paying attention to the technology, to be very honest with you. So I've had a massive interest, as I said, in that NFT space, in that Bitcoin space. I think it's fascinating. I've been looking a lot into the kind of whole, online world of selling courses and marketing and, you know what I'm saying? And that sort of influence and sphere that it has on entertainment industry. You get what I'm saying? I'm actually have a lot more interest in that nowadays than actually particularly listening to like any particular artist that comes along. Fortunately for me, I have kids who are listening to music every day. So they're always quick to come and say, Dad, check this out, check that out, check that out. So I do try and stay on top of, definitely things which come out. I'm not one of these anti-trap dancehall people, as you like to call it. I've said it in many, many interviews. I think there's a lot of great music still being made out of Jamaica. I think there's a lot of great dancehall still being made, even though the sound is different, even though it's not the 90s, which is my era, you understand, which I kind of grew up in. I still think there's fantastic music out there and fantastic artists out of Jamaica. You get what I'm saying? And I do love a lot of what they're doing, both the producers and on the artist side. You get what I'm saying? So I definitely try and keep in touch with that. And I keep an eye on that as much as possible as well. And at our core at JR, we're still, musicians, I said music school, I play guitar. We're never going to really leave that. We still love music. You get what I'm saying? No matter what the business side brings or doesn't brings. So that's always going to be a part of us, no matter what we end up doing in life.
Yeah. And my final question to you is, in your whole time doing music, what has been your greatest lesson, and what do you want young artists to understand about this business?
I think the greatest lesson in it is that at some point in time you have to realize that it may be art for you, but it's business for almost everybody else who is involved in it. So the art part of it is you as the creator, and you're making your song, and perhaps you with your producer, and you're making the beat and you're making the recording. After that part of it is finished, it's pretty much all about business, whether or not it can sell, whether or not it can stream, whether or not you can perform on a stage show, whether or not you have that value assigned to you. I think when you start understanding that, it kind of gives you a broader look at like how to function in the industry then, instead of constantly trying to, crow from the top of the rooftop and talk about how great you are as an artist and how unfair things are and the break that you're not getting and the people who are fighting against you and what the radio man is doing and the blah, blah, and the boy J.R. Watkins don't feature my song pan ER. You get what I'm saying? When you get that stuff out of your system and you start to understand like, no, but what's your business value to everybody? You know what I'm saying? You want to have your team, or you can pay the team. The team need to get paid. The team is not doing it just because they think your second verse was amazing. And I think a lot of artists still kind of get stuck in that place of like, boy, we have talent. And it's a word Jamaica loves to throw it around. Yeah, man, he's so talented, as if talent is supposed to equal remuneration for service. And it doesn't. We're all talented. Everybody, me talented, you talented. All of us have talent. Jamaica is never short of talent. One thing for certain, we have enough talent all over the place, all the time. It's about how you capitalize on it. So I don't think having talent is like the reward to be able to say, well, I'm talented, so please reward me now with success because I'm talented. I think that's a critical mistake we keep focusing on in this country, especially with our creative industry, talking about how talented people are and why they should be because they are talented. You follow what I'm saying? Game is like 15% talent, 85% business. You know what I'm saying? I think we just need to be able to get that and understand that balance. And if you're the artist and you don't want to think about that, then put some people around you who think about that part. And you focus on being talented and making music. You understand what I'm saying? Or creating your art, and let the people around you who you trust focus on that business side of it. You get what I'm saying? And on the money-making side and the career side. And that's what I would love to see. And I'd love to see more stories of more artists being able to mature as the years go by and we can look at them and say, yes, they're still around, they're good, their families are good, they made some good investments, they did some good things, they have a catalog, they're doing whatever, and not the sub story of like, boy, whatever happened to that guy? Why he was big back then and what can I hear from him now? One thing. That's also another, you know what I mean, very sad story about Jamaican music and musicians, which we need to correct and we need to change that.
Yeah. Big up Jeremy Harding. This was so insightful. If you notice, I let you talk. But when you're talking, I'm totally absorbing what he's saying, Regin. Big up yourself. Big up. This is World Music Views. World Music Views TV show, World Music Views podcast, available everywhere. Thank you for coming on, Regin. Big up.
Thanks, JR. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me. All the best.
All right. You too. Bye.